Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on this Saturday where we're going to talk about Jamboard. As you may or may not know, my new book, Teaching with Google Jamboard, just came out, and this has been one of, not the book, but Jamboard has been one of the lifesaver tools for remote learning. If you have not gotten into Google Jamboard yet, it is just really a great tool for teaching either in person or remotely. Just a little plug, you can find my book, Teaching with Google Jamboard, on Amazon, and you can go to alicekeeler.com/books if you'd like to check it out. Please feel free to ask any questions anytime. What I have over here that I am presenting is I am in Google Jamboard. Now, Captain Obvious says that this is a Google product since it is Google Jamboard. And I have my frame here, where I'm using this. Oh yes, I can repost the link, no problem. I am using this to show you how you can use Jamboard. You can see that I have several things on the screen. And then I'm gonna come up here to the very top, and at the very top is called the frame bar. And so we call them frames, not slides, not screens, although personally I use them pretty much interchangeably. Obviously in Google Slides, I say slides. When I'm using Desmos, it's a screen. Whatever you want to call it. Go to the next page. So you'll see I have this arrow to go to the right, and it takes me to the next screen. You can see I have 8 frames in my jam. I have 8 frames. You can have up to 20. 20 is the maximum. And I suspect that the reason for that is because it seems a little crazy, like what? I can have like unlimited slides in Google Slides. Why can I only have 20 frames in Jamboard? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that graphics and having this open canvas is very resource intensive. And I've done it where I've put so much stuff on a jam, it does start to choke. And I have very good internet. And so I think just to maximize the functionality that it works really smoothly, I think they limit it to 20, but that's just a hypothesis and a guess. And again, if you have any questions, please either put them in the chat or go ahead and unmute your mic. The link that I put in the chat is not this Jamboard, it's a different one, and just allows you to play and mess it up and draw all over it. So you can go to those different frames like I had mentioned. What I'd like to start this presentation is by saying, what is Google Jamboard not? It is not a presentation tool. And you're like, Alice, then why are you presenting with it? I know, because it's a presentation on Jamboard. And since what I'm really wanting to do is demonstrate how awesome Google Jamboard is, I am using it as a presentation today. But I think the most important thing to know about Google Jamboard is what it is and it is not. Like, don't be grumpy that it doesn't work like Google Slides, because it's not Google Slides. And not only is that not perfectly okay, it's great because it does different things. So what I want you to do is put yourself in the frame of mind that this is not Google Slides. It's not a presentation tool. So there's no transitions. You can't change the font. It is all the things you can do in Google Slides. That's not things you can do in Jamboard. Although you are certainly able to send suggestions to the Jamboard team. So in the upper right-hand corner, you will see that it says more actions. And when you click on that 3 dots, it's going to drop down and you can send feedback to Google. So one of the things that I really like that Google Slides have that Jamboard does not have is where I can see a tiled view of all of the frames at once. I don't know if that is on their roadmap. In fact, I literally have no idea what is on their roadmap. So is Jamboard going to come out with? I don't know. So it's going to be a surprise to all of us, but I do know they're constantly working on making new features. In fact, this new feature, See Version History, is pretty new. It just came out a few months ago, and that really has been the game changer to make Jamboard a lot more functional for education. So when I see the version history, just like in Google Docs, just like in Google Slides, just like in Google Sheets, I can see when the edits were. I can click on the version and it'll allow me to rename it. So I'm going to rename this back to template, and I can restore this version just like I can with Google Docs, just like I can with Google Sheets, and just like I can with Google Slides. It is a Google product. It does save to Google Drive. I have that on one of my other frames. Whoop, right? It is a Google product. It does save to Google Drive. There is no save button, so no panicking. So for those of you who just joined, here is the link to the sample. These are not to my slides. I don't have slides. I have a Google Jamboard today, but I do have a sample Jamboard for you to play with that is separate from the one that I have. So it's not a presentation tool. If you want to be a presentation tool, you're going to be grumpy. It's not a replacement for paper. This is a collaboration space. It has got so many great advantages that elevate what you can do with paper. So that is one of the main themes that Kim and I have in this book, Teaching with Google Jamboard. One of the main themes is how we can improve learning with Google Jamboard, not just make it digital, not just being a substitute for using with paper. It's something that you should know is it was not designed for education. Actually, the only thing that was designed for education is Google Classroom. Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and clearly Google Meet was not intended to be used by children. So that has a lot of corporate features. Why does it do this? Why can't I lock this down? In a more corporate environment, those things wouldn't necessarily be valued. And obviously education is a subset of all of the market that uses Google Meet, Google Jamboard, and Google Slides. So just to be aware, it is not designed for education. It is definitely a great use for education. That just wasn't its first function in design. And it is definitely not a silver bullet. It is a tool just like any other tool. I can make Minecraft boring. I can make Google Slides boring. I can make Jamboard boring, or I can design for student interactions and use good pedagogy where the tool is irrelevant. We know what's good for learning. And so how you choose to use Google Jamboard is going to be what makes education better, not just the fact that you created a new jam. Speaking of which, how do I create a new jam? I'm going to click on my frame bar here. I'm going to add a frame so that I can add for you that if you want to make a new one, if you go to jam.new, it would allow you to create a brand new Google Jam. Now I wanted to show you how I can add additional frames and I can insert links, but the problem is with Google Jamboard is it is not a presentation tool. It's really a brainstorm collaborating tool. So for now, the hyperlinks don't work. So if I were to put a link on this frame, it would not be clickable. So just kind of a friendly heads up. I feel confident at some point they would add functionality for hyperlinks in there, but just so you know that right now, that is not the case. So I'm going to go to a new tab. If I type in jam.new, it's going to make me a new Google Jam where I can use the toolbar and I can write. I can use the sticky note tool, which is my favorite part of Google Jamboard, and I can move things around. What you'll notice is after I draw, I always like to switch back to the arrow tool because really the beauty of Jamboard is getting your ideas down and moving them around. I cannot move the text, just so you know. And also the text is, the handwriting is always behind, handwriting is always on top. The other objects are always behind the handwriting. So you see as I draw over this sticky note and I switch back to the arrow, that text is behind the handwriting. All right, do we have any questions so far about Google Jamboard? Feel free to put them in the chat or turn on your microphone. Okay, and I will once again put the link to the sample in the chat over here. There you go. Okay, so it's not a silver bullet, it's not a presentation tool, and it's not just a replacement for paper. It has the potential to enhance learning with students because Jamboard is collaborative. That to me is one of the biggest things, is just like a Google Docs, just like a Google Sheets, just like a Google Slides, I can share it with someone else. So my base rule is who's joining the jam? Who is the student collaborating with? It could be me, the teacher. I want to get in there and look at their ideas and help extend them further. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development says you can only get yourself so far, and then you need someone who can help push you further. So Jamboard's a great way that I can just collaborate with students, that myself and the student are on the jam at the same time, or that I have at least 2 students on a jam at a time. So to me, that is the big advantage, is that it is collaborative. One of the things I really like about Google Jamboard is it promotes creative thinking. I like to tongue-in-cheek say, don't use Google Docs. Of course, I use Google Docs. I love Google Docs. But Google Docs, I kind of feel like I'm fitting in a box. Like, I'm so comfortable with it. I just type some words. It doesn't really like invite you to be creative. And before Google Jamboard, I'd say, don't use Google Docs. Why not use Google Slides? Now, Google Slides is multimedia, and I can insert video. I cannot insert multimedia video into Google Jamboard, but that open canvas where you just feel like you have some wiggle room to put things where you want just encourages you to be a more creative thinker. So why do I use Google Jamboard? Because it's really for creative thinking. It's a whiteboard of open space that's collaborative, and to me, this is it. We're going to idea share. When you get your students talking in the classroom and we share ideas and it facilitates discussions, when you look at John Hattie's list of what improves learning, class discussion is really highly ranked. So use Google Jamboard for idea sharing, for creative thinking, for collaborating. It's great for remote learning because we can be on the same jam at the same time and we can be brainstorming. Another cool feature about Google Jamboard, which is a digital whiteboard, is it is built into Google Meet. So we are in Google Meet right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to stop presenting, and I'm going to click on the 3 dots icon down at the bottom of my Google Meet, and I'm going to come up, and the top option under the 3 dots, more options menu, is whiteboard. So I'm going to go ahead and click on whiteboard. I'm going to start a new whiteboard, and it's going to ask me, and whiteboard means Google Jamboard. I am going, yes, I want the link sharing to be anyone can edit, and I'm going to send. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Window, I'm going to do this one. And if you would please, there we go, join my Google Jamboard Jam, and you'll notice the toolbar on the left-hand side. Would you find the sticky note? It is the 4th icon down, and just share your name or an alias. What name would you be like to be called today? You see, after I add my sticky note, it immediately shifts into the arrow tool because the idea of Jamboard is we think together. We work together. And so we want to move those ideas around on the whiteboard. Welcome Malone, welcome Jenny. Jen's here. You'll see they're stacking up, so don't be afraid to move your sticky note around. Happy birthday, Lauren. That's so exciting. Thanks for sharing your birthday with me. For those of you who don't know, Lauren is my super awesome friend in Israel, and I love looking at her documents because everything runs backwards. Like, whoa, it's a trip looking at Google Apps in mirror image. But she's just a super awesome person. So happy birthday, Lauren. Thanks for being here. Good morning. As someone has pointed out, you can add GIFs, animated images to your Jamboard to add images to a jam. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next frame. So up at the top, you'll see I have the frame bar. It allows me to see the different frames. I can use the arrow to add a 3rd frame and add a 4th frame, or to navigate back and forth. And the 5th icon is add image. At this current time, you cannot drag images onto Jamboard. You can drag images onto Google Slides. You can drag images onto Google Docs, but you cannot drag them onto Jamboard. So I'm going to go ahead and click the image. Now I can drag it into this box. So if I want to add images to my jam, I can just drag it on there. It's the closest one that I have. This is my new job, is working for Schoolitics. I'm not going to talk about that right now. But you'll see that I was able to add this image just by clicking the 5th icon, add image, and I can browse or drag into the box. But here is a fun secret, is you can actually copy and paste. So when I use my Bitmoji, I'm going to right click and copy the image. You can't see me doing that, but I'm able to just Control V paste. So to get my Bitmoji on there, I usually just copy the Bitmoji and Control V paste. If I'm doing a Google search for images rather than download the image, I'll just right click, copy the image, and Control V paste it right onto the Google Jam. All right, Jamboard is the product, Jam is the document. So we are using Google Jamboard, and this is our Jam. And each slide is a frame. Yes, happy birthday to my great friend Lauren. And if you want to go to the next frame, come on, join me on frame 3. Here's how you're going to do that. Click on the frame bar up at the top so it expands out and shows all of the frames. If you click on my icon, it'll jump to me. If you can also just click on the frame itself, obviously. Oh, yes, we have shapes that are in here. And so remember, Google Jamboard is what it is and not what it is not. It is not Google Slides. So when I create and add these shapes, these are super fun, but you are limited to how you can fill them. So you can see that I have the paint can up at the top. I can change the border and I can change the fill, but I only am limited to those particular colors for now. And of course, you can do the 3 dots and send feedback to Google. I will tell you what, friends, it never gets old. It never gets old seeing people together on the same document, be it Google Docs, be it Google Sheets, be it Google Slides, and especially in Jamboard, because you see how much more creative you all are being when we're in it together. If, heaven forbid, someone were to mess it up, when you click Clear Frame, it will clear everything off. And you'll notice it does not give you a warning. Really? Okay, I'm going to send some feedback to Google. Clear Frame should have a warning. It is right next to the Set Background button. So I want to set the background. How many times do you think when I set the background, do I accidentally click Clear Frame? And it's gone. But don't panic, because you can go to the 3 dots menu, go down to the 3 dots menu and see the version history. And I'm going to go ahead and restore this to the way it was before I cleared the frame. I don't think I got the right version on there. No, I ended up accidentally clearing off all of yours. Now, one of my tips when you're using the pen tool in Google Jamboard is to actually use the marker tool. So you'll see when you click on that first icon up in the upper left toolbar, it defaults to pen. I'm going to select the second icon and choose marker. It's just a little bit thicker. I can switch to highlighter, which I think is really fun to use. And then this little paint watercolors gives you a lighter highlight. So we can draw together, we can share ideas together. There is no commenting tool like in Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. You can add comments. In Jamboard, we don't add comments, we add sticky notes. Make sure that I'm on the arrow. I can move this around. Notice that it doesn't disturb the handwriting. When I drag and move things around, the handwriting cannot be moved. I can resize my notes, bigger, smaller. In the upper left-hand corner, I can rotate my note. Excellent, right? And then I can use the 3 lines menu on the note itself, so I can edit it, I can duplicate it, I can delete it, or I can switch up the order. Another thing that I like to point out is when I especially go to order, it gives me these keyboard shortcuts. I highly recommend that you learn the keyboard shortcuts. It's because when you do this with the notes, notice, whoops, here we go, note. Okay, this note is behind, my yellow note is behind the green note, all right? My yellow note is behind the blue note, and I can Control-Shift up arrow, and I change it to bring it to the front. So as I stick the sticky notes on there, see how pink is on top of the yellow one, Control-Shift down arrow puts it to the back, Control-Shift up arrow brings it to the top. Unlike Google Slides, I cannot use tab to go between elements. So the way Jamboard is really designed is to share ideas, to brainstorm, and to prototype. think through different ideas. You want to make sure that you're using the frame bar to go to those new frames, and that you click right below that little rectangle. You click below, you can see all of the frames that you have, and then the 3 dots icon allows you to duplicate that frame or delete it. You can also drag and reorder your frames up here in the frame bar. And go ahead and close this. You see that I have 17 viewers on here, and when I click on one of the viewers, it will take me to the frame that that viewer is on. So it's a great way to navigate when you are working together with students, is you find their name and what is, now this says Anonymous Wombat. When you share it with your students, you can share it in Google Classroom just like you can Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. And when you share through Google Classroom, the students are automatically added with their name, so you would know who it is that is drawing, and then you can jump to and see where each person is in the jam. Now, there is a laser pointer that doesn't stay. That's the bottom option. But if you look one above the laser pointer, you'll see that you can add a text box. And it gives you a toolbar at the top to modify the text box. What do you notice about this? You can't change the font. You can't choose the font size. I can go to display. Uh-oh, what did I do? Try it again. Did something wrong. I can resize the length. I've never seen this. Why is it whiting out? Okay, this is strange. There's a glitch happening right now. It is never, in fact, I was just doing this a few minutes ago and I had no problems. That's bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a text box. And you can see up at the very top in the toolbar that I can choose what size that I want it, and I can take the resizing handles on the side to resize them. And I'm not sure why. Is anybody else having this issue where they resize the text box and the text is going away? Literally was not doing that to me just a few minutes ago, so it's probably a Chrome extension that I have that's messing this up, most likely. I'm going to go to a new frame, and you'll notice you do have the option to set background. So I can set it to dot paper, to lined paper, graph paper, or this bottom option allows you to customize your image. I'm going to go ahead and browse. And so what I did is I created a Google Slides. I downloaded the Google Slides image. I used the file menu. I downloaded it as a JPEG so that I can add it as a background into my jam. And so you can set your own custom backgrounds by clicking Set Background. And so now you can create a step-by-step for students of here's where you're going to get your initial ideas, what's your first attempt, and what's your third attempt by creating those graphic organizers and setting them as the background. Okay, so what questions do you have about Google Jamboard? So I am on frame 6. Can you come join me on frame 6? Maybe someone else can resize this for me. I think it's my Chrome extension. On frame 6, if you have any questions, would you come and click sticky note? So can you make it wider so it extends out, whoever is so kind to be helping me? I am on frame 7. You can find me if you come up to the frame bar and go ahead and add a sticky note with your question if you have one. Any questions? And feel free also to just turn on your mic if you prefer. Go ahead.
What picture formats work with this, like JPEG or PNG?
Yep. JPEG and PNG, any of your standard ones work. And I like to do 9600 by 5400. I go to Google Slides, I create a new Google Slides, and in there the default is 960 by 540, and that's really the right dimension. So when I download it and I set it as the background in Jamboard, it works very nicely. But it's a little pixelated because you actually have a higher quality on Jamboard. So if you use all I do is I go to the file page setup in slides and I just throw a 0 on the end for pixels. So I just change it from 960 pixels to 9,600 and from 540 to 5,400, and I get a higher resolution. And yes, I saw someone said Canva. Canva is, of course, a great way to create backgrounds and images for Jamboard, and you could still use the same, either 960 by 540 or 9,600 by 5,400. Those are your ratios there in some proportion. I also wish they would make sticky notes purple. Purple's my color. I hear you. Send feedback.
What I did put an animated GIF or something on once, but I'm not sure how to do that again.
Oh, it's the same way that you would add an image. So when you go to the 5th icon, and you could do image when you a GIF is a image file, so you just upload it the same way you would a picture or a screenshot.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jenny, your question was, does the Google Slides have to be a certain size? It is the right size to begin with. So if you just use the default, works great. Okay. How do I add shared games like Connect 4? You can't add so much. So right now, I can't take a frame from one jam and copy paste it to another. I have to think that that's somewhere on their to-do list. I don't know. So I actually build them in Jamboard in the first place. So I have a Connect 4 game that I've created in Jamboard, but what you would have to do is make a copy of my jam and start from there. And always make sure that you're going to the version history and naming the template so that if you mess it up, you're able to get back to where you were. Oh, we have a few people on this slide. The resize buttons are in the corners only. Yes, right? So in Jam, unlike Google Slides, I only see it on the corners of the sticky note. On the other elements, though, like if I had a picture, you can see here on the text box that the resize is also in the middle for me to extend it right and left. But this is really what's great about it, is it's designed for sharing things and moving them around. So unlike Google Slides where you accidentally resize it all the time, you kind of avoid that using Jamboard. Right now, there is no option to add links in Jamboard, so please click the 3 dots, send feedback. Hyperlinks, please. Yes, I'd like them to be purple. Do I let each student have their own page? Absolutely. That's my favorite things to do, is to get all the students on the same Google Slides, the same Google Sheets, or the same Google Jamboard, and then they would each have their own frame. So the way that I do that is I teach them right off the bat. We do collaborative Jamboard, is they add a sticky note with their name. So a lot of times I'll create a graphic organizer with a sticky note. And then all they have to do is double click on it and they can edit it. So I'll put a little sticky note to remind them, put your name on here. And so one of my favorite things to use is the New York Times, what's going on in this graph. Every Tuesday, they come out with this new really cool, complex graph that I think is, even kindergartners, just making observations and seeing data visualizations is good for, I'm going to say, every subject, every grade level. Fight me on this. So this is definitely one of the things that I regularly do with my students, is I go to the New York Times, what's going on in this graph. I screenshot or download the image that they have, the graph that they have, and I set it as a background into the Jam. And then I put a sticky note that says your name on it, and then I come up to the frame bar and I duplicate, 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 so I have one per student. And then I can project this and we can have those conversations together. So what I should see on each of their frames is that they litter it with tons of sticky notes. I observe, I notice, I wonder. Yes. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Now, I found Jamboard to be great for word searches, of course. I use a flippity cup stimulus to create the word search. And then the brush, yes, because it's so light, is really great for circling and looking for things on there. Absolutely. And if you wanted to do a word search collaboratively, what a fun activity to do in a Google Meet. Just as you get warmed up and you're waiting for all the students to join, start a word search in Jam, and who can find the most words, and they can color those right on there. It just really honestly never gets old seeing everybody in the same place at the same time. I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. And I'm gonna, okay, thank you. And just move these around. So this is one of the things that I like to do is you'll notice I have students share their ideas. When I'm highlighting an idea, I make it bigger so we can all see it together. And then I can just tuck it away over in the corner after I've looked at it. It is very, very frustrating. Not only can I not copy from slide to slide the whole frame, I can't copy, like if I have a picture on one frame, I can't copy that picture to the other one, pretty sure. Actually, I think I can. No, I can't. I can use Control-C, Control-V. It just doesn't have it on the right click, which is interesting. I'm like, wait a minute, no, I have done that. Okay, so do I have ideas for math? Of course I do. I'm a math teacher. I have actually started a new book for teaching math with Google Jamboard, so it's straight up math ideas. But my main focus anytime I give a math PD is if you do the same math problems, you're going to get the same results. So as I shared at the beginning, is that Jamboard is not just a replacement for paper, but a way to really make it better. So one of my favorite things that I do with Jamboard is I go to openmiddle.com. In fact, let me go ahead and add this on here. If you go to openmiddle.com, you're going to be able to find DOK Level 2 and DOK Level 3 math problems. And Jamboard is really perfect for doing open middle math problems. And then I have a template. Let me share that with you. If you go to Keeler.com/openmiddlejam. Let me try it. Hold on. Let me make sure that's right. I got to remember my own. Yep. Okay. If you go to AliceKeeler.com/openmiddlejam. I cannot set the word wrap on the sticky notes. I cannot change the font on the sticky notes. Remember, this is not a presentation tool. It's an idea sharing tool. I have a great template for you to get started using Jamboard and math with Open Middle. Okay. Cool. And I always have more than 20 students. Yes. You know, I also have more than 20 students. So I create my initial template and then I create a copy of it and I just divide it in the alphabet. You students are on the A version, y'all are on the B version, and I'll have both of them up side by side and I'm toggling with them. Yes, you can only have 20 frames. So when you need more, you need to go to a second jam. Okay. Move that over here. Yes, goal setting, huge. I believe we do have a goal setting template in the book. We actually have over 150 sample jams. You'll notice if you open up to any page, we have a ton of QR codes that send you to a jam. We have a giant folder of over 150 jams in Google Drive. I don't know if the goal setting one is the one that you would like, but hopefully it would get you started. And I'm just such a big fan of Carol Dweck from Stanford. She wrote the best-selling book Mindset, and she has some great research around the value of goal setting. That's one of the best things that we can do. So I think that would work great. Please use that. And already answered that one. Any other questions before we finish?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, Victoria. Thanks for joining.
I got a quick question. I was wondering, what are some of your favorite things to do with Jamboard when you're teaching, like, let's say, I know you're a math teacher, but for social studies, there's a lot of social studies out there. So maybe some U.S. history.
Bob Marsden shared a bunch of his social studies things with me, and we included a couple of them in the book. So again, really kind of put your mindset around having kids share ideas, that you put out that higher order critical thinking question, not just using it as a, hey, write the answer in on the line. You can do that with pretty much any tool. It's how do we share ideas and build on those ideas together. He has the kids build timelines, One of the things that he'll do is he'll give them the topic. Well, it's 2021. We should teach differently with digital tools. So here's the topic. Why don't you go Google search it and start dropping in sticky notes of all the information you found. Now you've got these digital note cards to push around, share common ideas, have students. I like to do like, hey, you look at resource 1, you look at resource 2, you look at resource 3, add sticky notes of all the things that you learned about this topic, and then we use that to build our lesson rather than just using a pre-made PowerPoint. Scott Marsden has a ton of those ideas, but it's a couple of them. Put an image of a historic event, have them come up with caption for the image. That's a great one, Tasha. Thank you.
Can you tell me one more time that guy's name?
Scott Marsden. Type it over here. In a second, I'll try and find his Twitter handle. He's very generous and loves to share, so I'm sure he would not mind me sharing. Scott Marsden. And don't you just hate it when you look it up in Twitter and like, show me the people that I follow? It's this one. Got it. Here it is. Here it is. And let me screen share his Twitter feed. Stop presenting. And let me get Scott here. All right. Yes, please. In fact, you'll notice here one of his first tweets is retweeting Tony Vincent about Jamboard. So I don't think that one is Jamboard, but he shares a lot of stuff. So I would encourage you to give Scott Marsden a follow. Okay, any other? Yes, Esther Parks is not only another great person to follow, she also donated some ideas and templates for the book. Shout out to Esther. Fair Morals, love Fair Morals. And I'm a big fan of Joe Bowler. If anyone knows me, if I'm breathing, I am talking about Joe Bowler. So I have samples for using her 4 corners. If you want it in Google Slides, it's alicekeeler.com/solve it. I don't have a shortcut to my one for it in Jamboard, but I should make a shortcut for it. So that's where they do it another way, that they visualize it, that they write a story about it, and that they explain it. And they really get deeper into a math problem that goes beyond just find the answer.
Alice, I posted about the 4 corners for the one social studies person. I teach and supervise social studies, and I have to tell you that is one of the activities in Jamboard that my students love the most.
Oh, thank you.
And being that I'm a very hands-on, tactical, like get up and move kind of person, I had to find ways to like get my kids engaged this year.
Exactly.
When we were remote, and even when we weren't remote, like you can't just have the kids moving around the room like you used to right now with social distancing and everything. So that was an awesome way. The students, in my one Holocaust and genocide class, like I gave them like really tough questions about like bystanders and how they should be held responsible. And the discussion that came out of the 4 corners part, and you always have that one, when you do it in class, you always have that one person that's slow to move to whatever corner. And you saw the same thing with that. There'll be like 1 or 2 people that will slowly drag there, because I would have them create their Post-its on the 4 corner page with their name on it. They would drag to that spot, and then we would do different things where either they would write a rationale on there, or I would randomly have them talk about it, and then we would discuss it as a whole group. So just a really great way to engage them. And also, I had posted earlier, my What Stuck activity is, they love that too, because I used to always have them grab a sticky on their way out and stick it on the door. So I made like a door on a Jamboard, and like they would do the same thing where before they left the Google Classroom, they would post it right on there.
Don, thanks for those ideas. I don't know if you might be willing to, but if you would tweet maybe some of your resources and tag me, I would love to retweet that and share that out.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Those were awesome. Anybody else? Oh, she mentioned how difficult it is to engage students, and we all know how important it is. My new favorite person is Heather Lyons at Lyons Letters, and she's got a great book on how to engage students and go beyond compliance. So give her a follow. We'll go ahead and paste this into the chat. Any other questions? Oh, I wasn't, I'm not sure if I was screen sharing that and screen shared at some point. Here is Heather Lyons. She has a book on engagement. And I would encourage you to give her a follow and check out her book. All right, my friends, thank you for joining. I hope this gets you started with Google Jamboard. If you'd like some ideas of how to go further, I, of course, have 91 ideas here with my co-author, Kim Mattina, teaching with Google Jamboard. Thanks for joining. Have an awesome day.
Thank you, Alice. That was great.
Happy
Thank
birthday,
you.
Lauren.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.